A campaigning group claims that prisoners of conscience in China could still be having their organs removed for transplants, despite official denials from the Chinese state that the practice persists. The allegations come from a tribunal set up by the International Coalition to End Transplant Abuse in China, chaired by a former war crimes prosecutor. The Chinese authorities say the practice of taking organs from executed prisoners without their consent came to an end 4 years ago. This report from Matthew Hill.
This secretly filmed footage captures transplant patients in a Beijing hospital last November. It appears to show transplant patients in a busy waiting room admitting they'd only waited a few weeks to receive their organ. The suspicion is there's a roaring black market in organs. In other countries, it can take years to receive a suitable matching organ, but here it's only weeks. So where are they coming from? China admits it used to take organs from executed prisoners and claims it stopped the practice in 2015. But campaigner Yu Ming believes organs are still being harvested from prisoners of conscience. Falun Gong is a spiritual movement based on meditation, regarded as an illegal sect by China. Over the past year, the tribunals heard from over 50 witnesses and experts, including several former detainees. People like Yu Ming, a Falun Gong follower, who showed the hearing evidence of his badly tortured body. He carried out the secret filming we showed. Falun Gong and Uyghurs from around the world gave their testimony via video link of invasive and unwarranted medical tests in China.
We were given X-ray in that very huge hospital. I remember seeing other non-prisoners, ordinary people also there. And then after our blood was taken, we were escorted back to the cell.
Others who testified in person also protested peacefully in London's Chinatown.
Then they took me to another place. Just used one long tube. They took some blood.
There's a great deal of material in written form.
The hearing concluded prisoners of conscience, primarily Falun Gong, have continued to be killed to order for the purposes of extracting and transplanting their organs for profitable gain. China does have a fledgling organ donation scheme, claiming more than 500,000 people have registered to donate. In a statement, the Chinese government says it always follows the World Health Organization's guiding principles on human organ transplantation. It says human organ donation must be done voluntarily and for free, and it hopes that the British people will not be misled by rumours. But until unannounced inspections are allowed in Chinese hospitals, these campaigners will continue to call for action. Matthew Hill, BBC News.
Well, the full report of this tribunal has been released in the last few hours. It finds that there is clear evidence of a supply chain of organs over many years, the report says, from an unaccountable source. The tribunal being certain that it was indeed the Falun Gong, the Chinese religious sect, being used as a source, probably the principal source of organs for forced organ harvesting. This report adds that while it doesn't have sufficient evidence to reach the same conclusion for the Muslim Uyghur community, the vulnerability of the Uyghurs to being used as a bank of organs is also obvious, that they are clearly vulnerable. Well, with me is a kidney surgeon and consultant, Dr. Adnan Sharif, who's secretary of the group Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting. The group campaigns globally against illegal and unethical transplant activity. And Dr. Sharif, you focus on China. What convinces you that forced labour, that the Falun Gong in particular, are being used in this way?
I mean, certainly the evidence and the statistics just stacks up against the Chinese claims that they have stopped using forced organ prisoners. And there's been a number of accounts, eyewitness accounts, certainly engagement with a lot of our professional colleagues to suggest that the numbers of transplants which do occur in China simply are not possible with what is a very, very fledgling organ donor system. And there is, as the judgment mentioned today, a vast number of unaccountable organ donors, which we believe are prisoners of conscience who are killed on demand.
It's quite a jump, though, isn't it, from saying we can't quite make the numbers add up to saying, therefore, it must be forced extraction, perhaps even, as the report says, extraction of organs from live prisoners.
Absolutely, and I think that's the importance of this tribunal, which was independent from all these groups which have for many, many years been claiming these allegations against China. And I think that's the importance of Sir Geoffrey Nice's tribunal and the China Tribunal's judgment to show.
But it's a tribunal set up by campaigners who start from the assumption that the Chinese state is up to no good.
But it is independent of that, of all these groups, and certainly our group, we contributed evidence to this tribunal as well, but we've had no influence in the actual judgment of it. And I think the important thing is the fact that this tribunal has attempted to be as fair as possible. So it has invited representation not just from the People's Republic of China, but all these organisations such as the WHO, the Transplantation Society, to give judgment. And the fact that they haven't, I think, speaks volumes.
Yeah, the WHO, the World Health Organization, does not call out China on this.
Absolutely. Not just the WHO, but the Transplantation Society as well. And I think those are major concerns for us, certainly as a professional medical community, as to why they don't call them out. And certainly the evidence that they suggest that China has stopped simply does not stack up.
Do you feel that the WHO is ignoring evidence?
We do, yes. We do feel that not only are they ignoring evidence, but their silence on this becomes complicit. And as the final sentence of this judgment reported, that we are dealing with a criminal state. And I think organisations such as the WHO need to acknowledge that.
Now, when you look at, there was a report in the Washington Post, for example, recently about this. When you look at the amount of immunosuppressant drugs that are being taken, and you have to keep taking them, obviously, if you've got a transplanted organ inside you, the Post report recently is that China's share of global demand for these drugs is in line with the Chinese official statistics.
Well, I mean, it's difficult to get official statistics from China, and the one thing we're not aware of is, one of the allegations is that these transplants are not just feeding a vast Chinese population of people who need organs, but also a vast international market. And those figures will not be in those figures, because essentially if you've travelled from the UK or some other country, you will not be picking up immunosuppression from China. You'll be picking that up back in your original country. So it is very difficult to get official figures. In most countries such as the UK, the United States and Australia, our transplant figures are very open, they're transparent and they're publicly available. We do not have the same case in China, and therefore it's very difficult to accept what official figures we have.
Now, in this report, the focus is on the Falun Gong, but there is also a lot said and a lot of concern about the Muslim Uyghur population, and the BBC has reported on these huge internment camps. So what kind of evidence or what are you looking for now to be able to build on this report?
I mean, what everybody's always been looking for is that magic bullet, that hard evidence that these crimes have happened. Now, that is very difficult in a very closed, secretive country that China is. So I think what we need is an independent investigation, not the investigations which have been done by the Transplantation Society, which are pre-arranged visits to a number of hospitals. We need an independent investigation which is completely separate from all these organisations to actually look into these allegations further. But I think the judgment today, is very even-handed, but it's been very firm in its conclusions.
Dr. Adnan Sharif, thank you very much for coming in.